I'm a fa- I'm a fan of a lot of different board and card games. I like strategy games a lot. For example, Dominion, Settlers of Catan, Stone Age, Pillars of the Earth, Chess, Risk, Stratego. Yeah, those seven are games I really enjoy. But I also enjoy a lot of different card games, like for example, Phase 10, Skippo, Five Crowns, Rummy, Canasta, or Hand and Foot's our name for it, 500. And I also have played before a good amount of more simple card games, like for example, Go Fish, Uno, War, Garbage. I actually have played Uno recently. And actually, I've also played Pit, In a Pickle, Apples to Apples. Are there other card games I played before? Not ones I can think of off the top of my head. When it comes to board games, I have played Clue, Monopoly, Life, Sorry, and Scrabble before. Though, admittedly, I haven't actually played Scrabble in a good amount of time. I also have played several different games that involve words, like for example, Bananagram. Scrabble is an example of this actually. Boggle, Taboo, Categories. I've also played a game called Rumacube, which involves tiles, not cards or a board. I've also played Sequence, which has a board, but it also uses cards. I played a game called Triominoes before, which has these, which where you use these triangles. You're not using cards or a board. And they've also played Ticket to Ride before. Specifically, I own Ticket to Ride Europe. In fact, actually, speaking of that, I, for years, have owned a lot of different board and card games. The funny thing is that when it comes to Dominion Settlers of Catan specifically, I own the base version of Settlers of Catan along with 3 expansions for the game. When it comes to Dominion, I own the base game of Dominion along with the Intrigue, Seaside, Prosperity, Dark Ages, Adventures. Yeah, I currently own the base game of Dominion as well as 5 expansions. Actually, speaking of card games, I've also played Seven Wonders before. I own 2 expansions for it actually called Cities and Leaders. The funny thing when it comes to Dominion is that it's a big game because there is like 13 expansions are out right now, both small and big box expansions. And there's another expansion that's going to be coming in December, actually. It's called Plunder. When it comes to Settlers of Catan, that's also a fairly big game. Admittedly, there aren't as many Settlers of Catan expansions as there are Dominion expansions. There's only 4 expansions for Settlers that have been released, but there's also spin off games which take the same basic idea, a good amount of the same rules, and just apply them to a different setting or a different time period. For example, you have Settlers of America or a basically Settlers of Catan variant that's set during the Stone Age, or I think you have one that's themed around Star Trek, for example. It's is still a really popular game, even though there aren't as many expansions for it as Dominion. You can imagine with that many expansions, there's a huge amount of replayability because you can play the game so many times and not use the same cards. I've let's see what other games I played before. I, I played Battleship and Hangman before. I used to own Hangman, though admittedly you don't need the box version of Hangman. I mean, all you need is just a surface you can write on, some writing utensil, and then you can play the game. So you don't need the actual pieces for it. I still own Battleship. I actually own all the strategy games that I mentioned earlier, along with basically every other game that I mentioned earlier. I don't own Boggle or Bananagrams. I also I I have decks of cards. So you play more of just a deck of cards, but that's gonna be it for now though.